statements, rumors, and different interesting updates from Kiev. And the most important one is that, according to pro-Ukrainian sources, Russia is preparing 15 new divisions for large-scale offensive. That was stated by deputy head of Zelensky's office. Russia plans to increase its group in Ukraine by 150,000 people. This is about 50 new motorized rifle divisions, Palisa said. Their formation continues. Russia has no problems with attracting personnel. In the near future, the Russian armed forces will put maximum pressure on those areas where this is possible. The Russian army continues to gradually advance, trying to push through individual sections of the front, having tactical successes. This is a very important statement, and currently we have several deadlines for this offensive operation. Zelensky a few weeks ago reported and told us that Russia will try to start this offensive operation in the late April, so basically within 2 or 3 weeks from this moment. A pro-Ukrainian source reported that the Russians will be able and will have enough of forces, with enough of units, prepared forces and units, only by the late January, by the late July and the early August. So basically in 3-4 months from this moment. Of course, we don't know for sure when exactly the Russians are planning to start, and the most important, we don't know for sure whether these updates are correct and whether these updates is let's say real information, but not something fake. I'm telling you this because we see that the Western countries, especially the United States of America, now currently are trying to create a base, something like a legal base that will allow them to quit this negotiation process, this settlement process in the future, and to blame the Russian Federation that the Russians is the side that broke this entire process. For example, today the Secretary of State Marco Rubio gave his own statement, and he commented this situation with these rumors. US Secretary of State Rubio commented on rumors that Russia is preparing for a new large-scale offensive. If we wake up tomorrow and see the Russians launching some kind of offensive operation, then it will become clear whether they want peace or not. If not, we need to know in advance to adjust our policy, Rubio said. And as you can see, it's very interesting and very tricky statement, because when talking about the current situation along the line of combat contact, we know that the Russians are advancing along the entire line, and in 8 of 10 cases we adjust the map in the Russian favor. Maybe even in 9 of 10 cases we adjust the map in the Russian favor, and just one case for 10 we adjust the map in Ukrainian favor, which means that there is already offensive operation. But when talking about this offensive operation, more precisely about the rate of this offensive operation, we see that everything is okay with the United States of America and the Western countries, which means that there is one important thing that I would like to point to attention. The Western countries, they accept that the Russians are attacking the Ukrainians along the entire line of combat contact, and that the Russians improve their positions from day to day, but for a minimal value. For example, during the previous 24 hours, the Russians improved their positions in the vicinity of the settlement by the name of Lapkova. So this small part was taken by the Russians. According to neutral mappers, the Russians improved their positions, and they're trying to maintain the lines between the settlements of Lugavoye, Жеребянки, Lapkova and Stepovo, just to have better positions before further offensive operation in the direction of Kamenskaya. So with this situation, the Western countries and the United States of America are okay. So there is no problems. There is no problem. There are no problems with this. There are no problems that the Russians can attack this way, that the Russians can take some territories as a result of such offensives. But for example, if the Russians begin offensive operation as they started in the 2022 at the beginning of the special military operation, then the Western countries and the United States of America will not be okay with this. Or if the Russians began offensive operation as the Ukrainians began in August of 2024 in the Sudzha direction, when every single day the Ukrainians were taking under control 5-6 tenths of villages just a day. So this is something that is not acceptable, and that the Western countries can accept. So now we understand the difference. If the Russians are moving moving slowly, step by step, then the Western countries have no problems with this. But if the Russians are able to break through the lines, to break through the Ukraine positions, and to dig in deeper in the territory of Ukraine, this is something that the Western countries will never accept, and they will rearm Ukraine with the purpose to stabilize the situation and to return back everything to the situation when the Russians advance just several, let's say, hundreds meters a day. Anyway, let's continue and let's discuss the situation in the Bogatyr direction. According to information we have, during the previous 24 hours, the Russians managed to improve their positions in this area, and we see that the Western countries are okay with this progress. If you remember, just yesterday, the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation reported that as a result of clashes, the group of forces East managed to establish complete control over the village by the name of Veselaya. We are talking about this area. And today, the Russian sources published very interesting video where we can see how Russian soldiers raised flags, their flags on the most northern part of this settlement. So based on this video, we are not adjusting anything because we adjusted the map yesterday, but yesterday we adjusted the map based on the Minister of Defense report, and today we have geolocated proof. Russians established control over this territory. Furthermore, according to different sources, today the Russians continue their offensive operation, and the first Russian sabotage and reconnaissance groups entered the southern part of the village by the name of Fyodorovka, and different sources reported that there are already clashes for the first buildings in the most southern part of this village. Fyodorovka is the last settlement on the Russian way towards the city, towards the village by the name of Kamar. So this is the last village, and if the Russians are able to establish complete control over this territory and to force the Ukrainians to fall back further in the northern direction, then the Russians will be able to establish complete FPV drone control over the main supply lines that Ukrainians use to support their forces in the villages of Bogatyr and in the village by the name of Alexeyevka to the northeast of the village of Veselaya. So we're talking about this part. When talking about this territory, according to different sources, the Russians managed to improve their positions and to get a bit closer to the village of Bogatyr. For example, this is the situation by the end of the 3rd of April of 2025, and this is the situation by the end of the 4th of April. We don't have any geolocations that can confirm this. We have several changes on map that were provided us by Nato mappers and by